documents quiet, hidden from the American public. I had kept them quiet. My motives, to be sure, were initially those of an observer, a Rand social scientist interested in understanding the internal processes of government. But my role was one of a participant, even when I acted as an internal critic. Having expressed my objections, I stayed in place, observed, took part. In short, I did the jobs assigned to me. Henry David Thoreau said, "Cast your whole vote, not a strip of paper merely, but your whole influence." What if I were willing to give up my top secret clearance, my career, my privileged access to decision makers? What if I gave all that up? What if I were willing to risk prosecution? And I thought, all right, I have in my safe thousands of pages of documents that give the lie to this pattern of deception. I'm not going to be part of this system of lying anymore. So I went and saw Tony, and I said to him, you know, that study I mentioned, I have it, and I'm ready to put it out. I'm going to put it out now. Can you help me?
Can you find a Xerox machine? I said, I've got the very place.
I began Xeroxing the McNamara study in the fall of 1969. At the end of the day, working at Rand, I would put several volumes into my briefcase to take with me. Walking past the security guards, I could feel my heart beating. I couldn't help thinking about the dozen or so secrecy agreements I had signed over the course of my career in government. The task seemed endless. I often worked through the night. Early in the morning, I returned the papers to my safe at Rand and headed home. I'll get back to my house on a little narrow beach in Malibu. I love to body surf, and I would go in every morning before I went to bed. And I remember at some point during this, being in the waves, in the sunlight, and looking back at the hills of Malibu and the waves, which I loved, and thinking, how can I be doing this? How can I be giving all this up?
I was 13 at the time. He said there was a secret history of the Vietnam War that he'd been reading, and he had a copy of this. And he had decided that he wanted to make a copy of it and make it available to Congress. He described it in terms of civil disobedience. Would I help him? I didn't suppose that he literally needed my help, but that this was something risky and very important to him, and it was important to him that I be a part of it in some way. And I think that very afternoon began copying the Pentagon Papers.
The children were in between on this one in a way that I didn't realize. Their mother, my former wife, really thought that I'd done something very bad and had involved her children in it. Whereas my thought was that I'd given them a chance to be in on something quite historic. Well, I didn't know when I'd be stopped, and I thought it would be within a matter of weeks, and that I might never see my children again, except through thick glass. I wanted my son, who was 13, to see that I was doing this because I thought it was the right thing to do, and doing it in a straightforward manner, that I hadn't gone crazy. There was a night where Mary, my daughter, who was only 10, got into it. She complained about being left in the car, so she came up. So I gave her a job to do. Tony was copying, and Robert was collating, and Mary was cutting top secret off the top and bottom of the pages.
Just working away when all of a sudden there was a knock on the door.
There was a knock on the door, the glass door next to me, and I see two large blue uniformed policemen.
and there was an LAPD standing there. And I said to myself, these guys are really good.
So I saw this family scene, you know, of my 10-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son. I sort of casually covered the machine. I took the lid and I put it over the top secret stuff on this and cleared up a little and then opened the door.
They said, no, your alarm's gone off again. And he said, oh, I'm sorry, I got to learn how to figure out how to do that. And they said, okay, you know, be more careful.
I thought, there was the guy looking through the window at me, at the crime of the century, crime in quotes, of course, and didn't realize it, went right on, never realized it, never heard from him again.
The study was 47 volumes, 7,000 pages. It would take me months of Xeroxing. I put my hopes in Congress. I took the papers to the most outspoken critics of the war. Surely they would embrace these revelations and would want to make them public.
The people that I needed to talk to or somehow to reach were the ones who had been saying they had been against the war for years while I was supporting the war, longer than me, who said that they saw through the war, that they saw that it was wrong. And what I wanted them to do now, and what I still want them to do, and what they still can do, is to act.
But no one did. Meanwhile, the war was escalating. Then I heard Congressman Pete McCloskey give a speech.
I said, I think they're not telling us the truth about Vietnam, and I showed some of the things I'd just seen a month earlier.
He had come back and revealed information about the secret bombing of Laos. Here was a U.S. representative using the word lies. So I thought, all right, here's a man with the guts then to use some documentation.
And somebody handed me a note. The note said, you're right, I have information that will document what you're saying.
And he said he'd like to discuss it with me, but he was shortly leaving. And if I was willing to come with him, we could talk about it on the way. So to show how desperate I was at this point, I was paying for a trip California just to talk with this representative.
And he had a passion about him, an intensity, I guess is the best way I'd describe him. He didn't smile much. He was deadly serious, wanting me to understand these documents.
I thought then, and I think more now than before, that documents had a power to be taken seriously and to attract attention that nothing else did.
I think all of us, knowing that they were top secret, were not sure what our rights were with respect to top secret documents. But those papers were a revelation. And I testified in front of the Fulbright Committee. And afterwards I went up to him and I said, Senator, I've got a set of papers here that if they were known to the public would cause public opinion to turn against the war. Well, he said, yeah, I got a set too.
There obviously was a kind of culture of timidity in Congress, deference to the executive branch, and a fear of being called unpatriotic, a fear of being accused of revealing military secrets and so on. And this culture was so strong that even senators and congressmen who were against the war didn't want to do anything with the papers that Dan Ellsberg offered them.
I had told my former wife what I was doing. She had told her stepmother, who had then told the FBI, it turned out. And the FBI then came to Harry Rohn. As president of RAND, he had been involved in getting me access to the Pentagon papers. His impression at the time was that I had not broken any law if I had given it to the Senate, that they had a right to see it. But I expected the FBI to come down on me very shortly after that.
He had really radically changed in his view of the war, and I knew that. I knew he had changed. In the first year of marriage, we're talking about him going to prison for the rest of his life. He gave me a number of the papers to read, and as I was reading it, I was horrified by the coldness, the calculatedness, and in particular the language